It's quarterly Christmas time again. Tesla reports its latest profit, along with the full self-driving beta making its presence known. This is Tesla Tidbits episode number 629 for October 23rd, 2020. This show is brought to you by my supporter, Brad. Brad wants to encourage all of you to consider joining him as a supporter of Tesla Tidbits on Patreon.com for as little as $1 a month. Let's join together to keep the Tesla Tidbits coming. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest quarterly earnings call episode. It was another banner quarter for the world's best EV manufacturer, so let's get started and dive into the shareholder slide deck for the technical details of the quarter. Starting off, and the number everyone wants to know, the company posted its fifth straight GAAP profit, netting $331 million on nearly $8.8 billion in revenue. Importantly as well, the gross margin on the automotive part of the business jumped 2.3% over last quarter to an eye-popping 27.7%. Overall operating margin nearly doubled from 5.4% last quarter to 9.2% this quarter. The deck notes that despite spending $2.4 billion in capital investments this year, the company has still generated $1.9 billion in free cash flow. We already knew that cash on hand would increase significantly after completing a $5 billion stock offering in the quarter, and now we see that Tesla has an enormous $14.5 billion in the war chest. This actually has become the source of some questions from some analysts, as they see this as money that the company could be using. However, as Elon did mention during the call, there's a trick to spending money and not wasting it. Personally, I see the number as a giant hedge against COVID risks, given at any point one or both factories could be shut down. We'll get into that later on in the earnings call too. As to production and sales, the company produced 145,036 vehicles in Q3 and delivered 139,593 of those vehicles. The production split was 16,992 for Model S and Model X and 128,044 for Model 3 and Model Y. On the delivery side, 15,275 vehicles were delivered for Model S and Model X, and 124,318 were Model 3 and Model Y. The production and delivery numbers were far and away records for the company. This brings the year's delivery total to 318,980 by my count. The company is still targeting 500,000 deliveries for this year, but this would require a Herculean effort in Q4 to make it happen, as they'll need to deliver 181,000 vehicles in order to reach that goal. Given this quarter, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but man, it is super unlikely. It's a shame that COVID hammered Q2, otherwise this would have been an easy win for the company. We are all rooting for you guys. Now it's time for the earnings call. Surprisingly, not a lot of newsworthy items out of the conference call this time, despite all the recent new developments with Battery Day and the release of the FSD software to the first tiny batch of beta customers. Let's kick things off with Elon's opening remarks about that full self-driving beta release that went out.
Regarding the full self-driving beta release, the Autopilot team, again, just a really all-star team. I spent a lot of time with the Autopilot team, and there's just a lot of really talented people in that team who've worked incredibly hard to get the beta release out. So I just really like to thank them for their hard work, and it's just a very smart group of people. So I think we're starting very slow and just very cautiously, because the world is a complex and messy place, and so we put it out there last night, and then we'll see how it goes, and then probably release it to more people this weekend or early next week, and then just gradually step it up until we have hopefully a wide release by the end of this year. And of course, as the system collects more data and it becomes more robust. It's sort of like, how does Google as a search engine get better? It's because everyone is programming it by asking it questions all the time and clicking on particular links. So it's got this great feedback loop, and that makes it an extremely effective search engine. It's the same thing for autonomy. Having on the order of 1 million cars that are providing feedback, and specifically feedback on strange corner case situations that you just can't even come up with in simulation. This is the thing that is really valuable. It's not like the the obvious stuff. Obvious stuff you can do in simulation. But weird corner cases, only reality can give you that. So but we're able to say, okay, we need to train the system on this corner case situation, and look for examples, so we can then train against those examples and improve some very esoteric corner case. Also important to emphasize that this is a generalized neural net-based approach. There is no need for high-definition maps or a cell phone connection. So the system is designed such that even if you have no connectivity whatsoever, and you're in a place that you have never been to before, and no Tesla has ever been there, the car should still be able to drive, just like a person. That is the system that we are developing and aiming to release this year.
We're finally starting to see the first video and impressions of the beta, allegedly blessed by Tesla from a couple of accounts. To say this is amazing is a massive understatement. The promise from the Paint It Black video from 2016 is finally turning into a reality. This, to me, overshadowed everything else you'll hear in this episode. If you haven't seen any of these videos, either search for hashtag FSDBeta on Twitter or check out the links in the description. You won't regret it. Full credit to Tesla owners Silicon Valley, Tesla Raj, The Kilowatts, Astro Jordy, and Brandon EE916 for posting and starring in the fantastic videos. It's hard to follow that up, but next, as I mentioned about hedging risk with COVID earlier, we hear from Zach Kirkhorn on the benefit of having multiple factories at the company's disposal.
Yeah, but what I think I would say generally to the question is, we've been in a position for some time now where we are prioritizing where in the world we send our production. And, there's different factors to that depending upon when different product changes are made, what the logistics routing looks like, different things going on in different markets. But we are in a position where we need to prioritize. What we're trying to do as fast as we possibly can is get production up higher so that we're not in a position of needing to prioritize again.
So not only will the company mitigate localized risk of shutdowns, but as Zach mentions, it means that there's no more need to be picking and choosing which overseas locales receive inventory. You simply provide inventory from the nearest factory rather than burdening Fremont with the full responsibility. One of the largest surprises of the call came when Elon was asked if LiDAR were free if he'd add it to Tesla vehicles. And the follow-up was the advice that he'd give to Jeff Bezos, who has been heavily investing in autonomy as of late. To give some context, if you haven't been following this odyssey, Elon's objections have primarily been cost, followed by aesthetics, and then declaring it a crutch other automakers are using to solve the true problem he believes to be vision. My thought on this has always been that if it was cheap enough, and could be implemented in a pleasing way, that it would eventually make its way onto Tesla vehicles. Turns out, I'd better not hold my breath.
Totally free? Probably not. I think even if it was free, we wouldn't put them on. I think you obviously need to if you care about autonomy, you need to focus on vision, because the entire road system is based on passive optical. So you have to solve passive optical to have a self-driving system that is a generalized solution. And once you solve passive optical, you've solved self-driving. So why bother with anything else?
My logic behind my thought was that anything that could improve either redundancy or reliability would be welcomed. Either I'm way off base on the benefit this could provide, or Elon is plain stubborn and entrenched on the topic, where naysayers would later say, see, they use LiDAR after all. I'd hope Elon isn't that petty if the tech is truly useful, and I don't see him as that kind of man. He seems to be a results-focused person, and anything that gets results will be worth doing. Lastly, we come to one of the other major topics of Tesla conversation, which is the Cybertruck. Elon got a good question asking for an update on the ramp of Cybertruck, and we got a fairly good answer too. Order holders, you'll want to listen up.
I was in the studio actually on last Friday with Franz and the team, just going over some improvements to the Cybertruck. Generally at Tesla we really aim to make the car that is delivered better than the car that is unveiled. Because it always drove me crazy. Car companies would unveil these awesome-looking cars, and you're like, great, I can't wait till I make that. And then the car they actually make is like much worse, and that is just, it's like really disappointing. So, man, we always want to make the car that we deliver be better than the car we unveil, and that's the goal with the Cybertruck. So there's like a lot of small improvements compared to what was unveiled. It's, I think it's going to be better than what we showed, and yeah, it's cool. It's going to be made in Austin, so it's dependent on completing that factory. And there are obviously new technologies with the high hardness kind of armored exoskeleton. This is never been done before, so there'll probably be some challenges along the way. And obviously something that's extremely high hardness and difficult to scratch or dent is also difficult to form. So there's some manufacturing challenges there. That's why it's so planar. Although it also looks good, I think, from a planar standpoint. Yeah, man, if all goes well, we'll be able to do some Cybertruck deliveries towards the end of next year. Yeah, so it's difficult to predict. I would say there's probably a lot of deliveries in 22 and some deliveries towards the end of next year if things go well.
So we already knew that deliveries would hopefully start at the end of 2021, but it sounds like Elon is definitely playing it cautious in guiding not to expect many. Hopefully, much like Model Y, they can beat their original planned timeline and futuristic trucks can be roaming our streets much sooner than expected. I'm going to call an end to today's show on that note. I feel like this call didn't have as many juicy bits as usual, but then the FSD beta may have overshadowed things I'd normally be excited about. I said on Twitter today that after seeing it, I've been trying to work away where my Model S turns into a Model 3 or Model Y thanks to this development. Thanks to all my patrons supporting the show at patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits. And as always, a special shout out to all the super patrons supporting the show at the $10 plus level. They are Ryan Scarborough, Lee Sweet, William Henry Crew III, Dorian Steve Guberman, Ralph and Cheryl Waterhouse, Todd Sullivan, Mitch Long, Zortek LED Canada, Morven Ogg, Raymond Didero Malkowitz, T Sportline, Vicky Kirk, Ricky Johnston, Nathan Garza, Ed Patterman, and Sunil Joseph. If you have feedback for me, the best way to be heard is to tweet at Tesla Tidbits and use the hashtag AskTeslaTidbits if you'd like your question to be considered for the show. Until next time, keep it charged and hit the road.